Good afternoon. I would like to call the meeting of the Assembly Committee on Revenue to order. Will the Secretary please call the room?
Assembly members Considine, De Silva, Flanagan, Gallant, Golding, Gray, Hafen, Wynn, O'Neill, Roth, Chair Backus.
And I am present. I would like to welcome, I guess, everybody here in Carson City. We are having technical difficulties with obviously the internet connecting to Las Vegas as well as the phone lines. With that, we also have some members who were in other committees but have appeared right now. So I just realized this, sorry about that. I thought I started and then people have appeared. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and I will start off with the work session. I was gonna switch out of order and do AB 435, but because we do have everyone here present, we'll go ahead and do the work session first, and then we'll go ahead and then go to Assembly Bill 435. With respect to the work session, I just want to let everybody know that we are going to roll some of the assembly bills on our list for work session, and those will include AB 535. The presenter of the committee's bill has an amendment that I did not timely get over to our staff, and so we will make sure we get that amendment circulated to everyone for review before our work session tomorrow. Likewise, Assembly Bill 539 is also going to roll over to tomorrow. So with that, I will go ahead and turn the work session over to Susanna Powers, our wonderful staff, to go over Assembly Bill 100.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers, Deputy Fiscal Analyst with the Fiscal Analysis Division. The work session documents are available to the public on Nellis. Assembly Bill 100 was sponsored by Assemblymember Gurr and was heard on April 3rd, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 100 appropriates $10 million from the State General Fund to the Nevada Air Service Development Fund for conducting a study of the development of intrastate air service in the state and for making grants. The bill additionally requires that any money in the fund at the end of a fiscal year be carried forward to the next fiscal year rather than reverting to the State General Fund. There are three amendments. First is a proposed amendment from Assemblymember Gurr and Gonick. It adds Assembly members Gonick and De Silva as primary co-sponsors. Second, a conceptual amendment from Assemblymember Gonick adopts and incorporates the entirety of the provisions of Assembly Bill 293 into Assembly Bill 100. This conceptual amendment revises the appropriation in Section 2 of Assembly Bill 100 from being deposited into the Nevada Air Service Development Fund created by NRS 231.690, instead into the Nevada Aerospace Development Fund created by Section 8 of this conceptual amendment. Third, an amendment from the Nevada Aviation Association removes references to NRS 231, retaining all other language and appropriations in Assembly Bill 100, moves the Air Service Development Fund and Air Service Development Commission from the Governor's Office of Economic Development to the Nevada Department of Transportation, creates the Office of Aerospace within the Department of Transportation, and giving the office authority over the Fund for Aviation, the Air Service Development Fund, and the Air Service Development Commission. Assembly Bill 100 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on February 10, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, do we have any questions for Ms. Powers or the bill sponsor on AB 100? It does not look like we do, so I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass. I think I have a first from Assemblymember De Silva and a second from Vice Chair Considine. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. With that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to Ms. Powers to go over Assembly. Thank you so much. I will assign the floor statement to Assembly Member Gurr, but I think this one's going to have a little trip before it makes it to the floor to another committee, probably, because it has an exemption. But regardless, we'll do the floor statement to Assembly Member Gurr. Next, in our work session is Assembly Bill 135. I will turn it over to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 135 was sponsored by Assembly Members Jurek and De Silva and was heard on March 13, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 135 expands existing partial property tax and governmental services tax exemptions for certain veterans to include their surviving spouses. A surviving spouse of a veteran who receives the veteran's exemption is not eligible for an additional exemption under existing law for surviving spouses. An individual who qualifies both as a veteran and as the surviving spouse of a veteran with a permanent service-connected disability may claim both the veteran's exemption and the exemption for surviving spouses of veterans with a permanent service-connected disability. No amendments were proposed. Assembly Bill 135 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on February 16, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Powers. Is there any questions regarding Assembly Bill 135? With that, I would go ahead and entertain a motion to do pass Assembly Bill 135. I have a first from Assembly Member Gray. I got that. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assembly Member Gallant. Those in favor say aye. Oh, sorry, you're right. Thank you, Vice Chair. Is there any discussion on the motion? I'll go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the interim, we discussed revenue not keeping up with inflation. With the current state of our economy, the economic challenges we're facing, and the Commission on School Funding has also addressed challenges with our revenue. I will be voting nay on bills abating or negating revenue, including this one.
Thank you so much. Any other discussion before we go into our vote? Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. We have one nay from Vice Chair Considine. The motion carries, and I'll go ahead and assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Jurek. Next in our work session documents is Assembly Bill 226. I will turn it back over to Ms. Powers to walk us through the closing documents.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 226 was sponsored by Assemblymember Mosca. The bill was heard on March 11, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 226 requires businesses that apply for certain transferable tax credits and tax abatements in Nevada to commit to community benefits plan outlining the project's various impacts and actions to support the local community. The Governor's Office of Economic Development, GOED, is authorized to ensure compliance, and businesses found non-compliant must repay the full tax benefits with interest. A conceptual amendment was submitted by Assemblymember Mosca to remove all language and add a checkbox to GOED application that applicants will submit a community benefits agreement within 2 years of being approved for the abatement. This bill excludes the film industry. Assembly Bill 226 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on February 20th, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any questions regarding the work session documents? With that, I would entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 226. Thank you so much. I have a first from Assemblymember De Silva. Do I have a second? I have a second from Vice Chair Considine. Is there any discussion on the motion? I think Assemblymember Haven.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a few concerns, especially with the amendment excluding the film, but including everyone else. I'll be voting no today, but when I see the final language, reserve my right.
Thank you so much. Any other discussion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. And the nays are from Assembly Members O'Neill, Gallant, Gray, and Hafen. With that, we would obviously, the motion carries, and we will assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Mosca. Next on our work session documents is Assembly Bill 243. So I will turn it back to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 243 was sponsored by Assembly Members Hippets and De Silva and was heard on March 13, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 243 expands the existing partial property tax and governmental services tax exemptions for certain veterans with permanent service-connected disabilities to include the surviving spouse of a U.S. Armed Forces member killed in the line of duty. No amendments were proposed. Assembly Bill 243 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on February 24, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Powers. Are there any questions regarding the work session documents for Assembly Bill 243? With that, I would entertain a motion to do pass Assembly Bill 243.
So moved.
I have a first from Assemblymember Nguyen. I have a second from Assemblymember Gray. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The motion carries, and I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Hibbets. Next, in our work session documents is Assembly Bill 359. I will turn it back over to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 359 was sponsored by Assembly Members Gallant et al. And was heard on March 20th, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 359 requires the submission of a question to the voters at the November 3rd, 2026 general election ballot asking voters whether to amend the Sales and Use Tax Act of 1955 to exempt certain coin, currency, and bullion sales from state and local sales and use taxes between January 1, 2027 and December 31, 2050. No amendments were proposed. Assembly Bill 359 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 10, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions regarding the work session documents regarding Assembly Bill 359? With that, I would entertain a motion to do pass Assembly Bill 359. I have a first from Assemblymember Gallant. I have a second from Assemblymember Gray. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. And I have noes. Can you guys raise your hand for noes? I'm so sorry. Okay, I have Assemblymember Golding. I have Assemblymember Roth. I have Assemblymember Vice Chair Considine. With that, the motion carries. I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Gallant. Oops. Next in our work session documents is Assembly Bill 362. I will go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 362 was sponsored by Assemblymember Considine, and the bill was heard on March 27, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 362 imposes a tax on a sale or transfer of a controlling interest in an entity that possesses directly or indirectly an interest in real property in Nevada when the value of the real property interest exceeds $100. The tax is imposed at the same rate as existing real property transfer taxes, excluding the additional 10-cent rate authorized in Churchill and Washoe counties pursuant to the Local Government Tax Act of 1991, and is computed based on the entity's estimated fair market value of its real property interest. The revenue generated from this tax is distributed in the same manner as the corresponding real property transfer taxes, except funds for the Division of Plant Health and Compliance of the Department of Agriculture are allocated to each county in proportion to the amount collected from real property within that county. Cities and counties may use their share of the tax distributed through the consolidated tax distribution to fund Tier 1 and Tier 2 affordable housing, with priority given to housing for the elderly and people with disabilities. A proposed amendment from Assemblymember Considine makes the following changes. Adds a section for the definition of controlling interest. Makes changes to the definition of value of an entity's interest in real property in Section 4, and adds a 25% penalty on entities that do not self-report accurately. In Sections 9 through 11, 13 through 22, and 24, have the transfer tax be collected by the county as existing transfer taxes currently are collected by the county, and for the county to receive 2% of all taxes, interest, and penalties collected on these transfers during the preceding quarter as compensation for 5 years to allow the county to adjust as necessary. Changes the effective date from July 1, 2025 to October 1, 2025 in subsection 2, paragraph B of section 26. Assembly Bill 362 was then noted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 31, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Powers. Are there any questions on the work session documents? With that, I will entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 362 with amendments submitted by Assemblymember Considine as outlined in the work session documents.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Considine. I have a second from Assemblymember Nguyen. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Oh, let me just get my nays. My nays are Assembly Members O'Neill, Gallant, Gray, and Hafen. The motion carries, and I'll assign the floor statement to Vice Chair Considine. I'll go ahead and turn it back to Ms. Powers to go over the work session documents for Assembly Bill 403.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 403 was sponsored by Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. This bill was heard on March 20th, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 403 requires the submission of a question to the voters at the November 3rd, 2026 general election ballot, asking voters whether to amend the Sales and Use Tax Act of 1955 to exempt the amount of any allowance against the selling price given by a retailer for the value of a used portable electronic taken in trade on the purchase of another portable electronic from the state and local sales and use taxes between January 1, 2027 and December 31, 2050. A proposed amendment from Assemblymember Torres Fawcett clarifies that the amount of the trade-in must be known and provided in full to the customer at the time of purchase in order for that amount to be deducted from the sales price for the purpose of calculating the sales tax due. Assembly Bill 403 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on March 17, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Powers. Is there any questions on the work session documents? With that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 403. I have a first from Assemblymember Gray. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblymember Gallant. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Nay. I have a no from Vice Chair Considine. The motion carries, and I will assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Torres Fawcett. With that, we can move to our next item in the work session documents, Assembly Bill 441, and I'll turn it back to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 441 was sponsored by Assemblymember Monroe Moreno. This bill was heard on April 8, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 441 revises the Nevada Educational Choice Scholarship Program by requiring scholarship organizations to use donations for which tax credits were issued against the modified business tax within 18 months of credit approval, with any unspent funds to be repaid to the department. A conceptual amendment submitted by Assemblymember Monroe Moreno requires scholarship granting organizations submit applications for tax credits on donations to the Department of Taxation during a set 30-day period. Only after this 30-day period does the department approve tax credits based on the order of priority indicated in the draft amendment. This would eliminate the current rolling application process. In addition, the amendment requires scholarship granting organizations applying for a tax credits for donations to provide the Department of Taxation with the total number of pupils that are currently receiving a scholarship that have applied for a scholarship for the upcoming school year, siblings of pupils that currently receive a scholarship that are applying for a scholarship for the upcoming school year, and applying for a scholarship that do not fall into the categories of pupils I just went over in A and B. 2, requires the Department of Taxation approve donations to fund pupils based on priorities of pupils listed above to the extent funds are available. Requires scholarship granting organizations be incorporated in Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions on the work session documents? With that, I would entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 441. So moved. I have a first from Vice Chair Considine. Do I have a second? I have a second from Assemblymember De Silva. With that, is there any discussion on the motion? Sure. I will go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. 441 is a difficult bill for me because there's some parts of it that I really do like, and there's some equal parts that I really don't like. I will be a no on the bill coming out of caucus, and hopefully we can get it addressed as it moves on, because I know it will probably go someplace else before it makes it to the floor. Thank you, Chair.
I'll go ahead and go to Assemblymember Gallant.
Just specifically, I'm in agreement with PK, but the part of the bill that I like is the 18 months, right? I would prefer 24, but I like the 18 months. But the other parts where it's making it overly complicated for these SGOs to be able to access this money and get it to these underprivileged kids is where I have issues. So I'm going to be a no as well.
Thank you. With that, those in favor say nay, yay? Yay. Those in favor against it say nay. Okay, we have no's from Assembly Members O'Neill, Gallant, Gray, and Haven. The motion carries, and I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Monroe Marino. Next in our work session documents is Assembly Bill 471, and I will turn it over to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers for the record. Assembly Bill 471 was sponsored by Assemblymember Hibbets. This bill was heard on April 1st, 2025 by this committee. Assembly Bill 471 provides for the taxation and licensing for remote sales of cigars and pipe tobacco by persons who make sales of cigars and pipe tobacco through any means by which the cigars or pipe tobacco are delivered to the consumer through the mail or other delivery service. The bill requires that these products delivered into Nevada by a remote retail seller be taxed at the same rate that is imposed on tobacco products other than cigarettes that are imported into the state by wholesale dealers of these products. An amendment to Assembly Bill 471 submitted by Assemblymember Hibbets at the hearing proposes the following changes. Adds vapor products and replaces the reference to other tobacco products with smokeless tobacco products in the definition of delivery sale under NRS 370.0285. Adds a new section to Chapter 370 of the Nevada revised statutes to define smokeless tobacco. Amends NRS 370.440 to specify that wholesale dealer of other tobacco products does not include any person licensed as a remote retail seller. Adds definitions to Chapter 370 of the NRS for actual cost list, cigar, pipe tobacco, remote retail sale, remote retail seller, stock keeping unit, and ultimate consumer. Clarifies the tax rates imposed upon the other tobacco products that are sold by remote retail sellers. Adds new requirements in Chapter 370 of the NRS for certain remote retail sellers to file monthly reports, maintain invoices and records, obtain licensing, and to furnish a bond or other security. Changes the effective date of the bill to January 1, 2026. Another amendment provided by Assemblymember Hibbets, which was submitted after the hearing on the bill, adds Assemblymember Nguyen as a primary co-sponsor. Assembly Bill 471 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on April 3rd, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Is there any questions regarding Assembly Bill 471 and the work session documents? With that, I would go ahead and entertain a motion to amend and to pass Assembly Bill 471.
So moved.
I have a first from Vice Chair Considine. I have a second from Assemblymember Nguyen. Is there any discussion on the motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion carries, and I'll assign the floor statement to Assemblymember Hibbets. Next in our work session is Assembly Bill 5, oops, excuse me, it is not. We are rolling Assembly Bill 535 and Assembly Bill 539 to tomorrow. But I will go ahead and move on to AJR1, which is the next item in our work session documents, and turn it back over to Ms. Powers.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Susanna Powers, for the record. Assembly Joint Resolution 1 was sponsored by Assemblymember Anderson. This bill was heard on March 27, 2025 by this committee. Article 10, Section 1 of the Nevada Constitution provides that the legislature shall provide by law for a uniform and equal rate of assessment and taxation of property under existing law for the purpose of determining the amount of property tax owed by the owner of a parcel of real property, the taxable value of the real property is equal to the value of the land plus the replacement cost of the improvements, depreciated at 1.5% for each year of adjusted actual age, up to a maximum of 50 years. Existing law also provides for a partial abatement of property taxes, which has the effect of establishing an annual cap on increases in property taxes. Assembly Joint Resolution 1 proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to provide that for the first fiscal year after real property is sold or transferred, the real property is ineligible for any adjustment to the value of improvements on a real property, which is based on the age of the improvement, and is also ineligible for certain partial abatements. This resolution also proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to require the legislature to provide by law for a program to provide for the payment of refunds of the taxes imposed on the primary residence of a person domiciled in this state who is 62 years of age or older, or a person with a disability. An amendment submitted by Assemblymember Anderson deletes the proposed subsection 12 and adds Assemblymember Considine and Senator Neal as joint sponsors. Assembly Joint Resolution 1 was denoted as being eligible for exemption by the Fiscal Analysis Division on February 25th, 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Are there any questions regarding the work session documents? With that, I would go ahead and entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Joint Resolution 1. I have a first from Vice Chair Considine. I have a second from Assembly Member Nguyen. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. We have noes from Assembly Members O'Neill, Gallant, Gray, and Hafen. The motion carries, and the floor statement would be given to Assembly Member Anderson. With that, that concludes our work session this evening, and we will go ahead and start with Assembly Bill 435. So I welcome Assembly Member Koning and Mr. Ablasar to the dais for the presentation of Assembly Bill 435.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Backus, or good evening. It's almost evening. Chair Backus, members of the Assembly Committee on Revenue. For the record, I am Assembly Member Dr. Greg Koenig, KOE NIG, representing Assembly District 38. I'm here to present Assembly Bill 435, which proposes to establish an opportunity for a dedicated facilities funding program for our public charter schools. One of the driving goals of AB 435 is to ensure parity between public charter schools and district schools. By creating an opportunity for a dedicated facilities funding program for public charter schools, we add another valuable tool in our toolbox to provide the very best education possible for every child in Nevada. Currently, Nevada's public charter schools must use per pupil funds for facilities, reducing the dollars available for student programs, classroom resources, and teacher salaries. Assembly Bill 435 addresses this challenge by giving charter schools an avenue for facility funds to offset these costs, instead of drawing on student dollars to pay for leases and bond payments. This will decrease the financial strain that directly impacts teacher compensation and resources for students. Furthermore, this bill will aid our building and trades by bringing more construction products using prevailing wage in order to build more schools in Nevada. We do have one small amendment that was requested by the City of Henderson, which we agree to. In Section 1, subsection 10, it says a charter school sponsored by the State Public Charter School Authority, and we are going to add in the words or a local government. So that would allow cities who sponsor charter schools like Henderson to be able to take advantage of this program. Joining me today is Mr. Eddie Ablisser on behalf of Academica Nevada. He will now walk us through the specifics of the bill and its proposed amendment.
Thank you, Assemblymember Koenig and Chair Backus, members of the Committee on Revenue, Assembly Committee on Revenue. Appreciate the opportunity to present tonight on a bill I'm pretty passionate about, and excited that I think for the first time in Nevada history, we're talking about public charter school facility funding. For the record, my name is Eddie Ablisser, A-B-L-E-S-E-R. And I want to really applaud. The Nevada Legislature stands out truly as a policy success story in this country in regards to public charter schools. Stanford's Credo Institute, which is the Center for Research and Educational Outcomes, has studied public charter schools for the past 20 years. One of the conclusions that they have found is that the change made by this legislature in 2019, creating a strategic framework of charter schools growing to reach a more diverse and underrepresented student population, that is where they increased in population students of color, students with disabilities and special needs, students from low-income homes. The Credo Institute has found that the Nevada has received the best gains of any other state in the country, aside from Rhode Island. But more importantly, they've closed the demographics gap, where public charter schools are now equally reflective with their community demographics in line with district schools. The National Alliance, Nevada, has cited that Nevada is the 9th best state in the country for public charter schools in the metrics of accountability, transparency, and more importantly, student outcomes. So what happened in 2019? Well, the legislature established a strategic framework to ensure that public charter schools provide a unique pedagogical approach that complements our school districts and at the same time becoming more accessible to all populations. All of the data has shown that public charter schools aren't just achieving but excelling at everything since 2019. Unlike other states, all of Nevada's public charter schools are public. And just like their sister district schools, all school contracts with private vendors for a variety of educational services, from testing to accounting to curriculum to janitorial services. And let me say on the record, there are no for-profit charter schools, public charter schools in this state, and that's something we're all proud of. That said, there is one very big difference between public schools in Nevada, and that is where district public schools receive facility funding through the local taxation, public charter schools are excluded from the ability to even receive the funding from those local taxes. The difference is roughly about 35% in funding that district schools get and use to invest in the classroom, while public charter schools dip into their per pupil funding in order to rent or lease facilities to host their school. While Nevada continues to ask our public charter schools to do more with less, and while they continue to outperform many of their sister district schools, Assembly Bill 435 is looking to level that playing field and create more opportunities for public charter schools by including them in the county's levy for facilities. Let me be very clear, this bill is not a tax, it is not a mandate, and in no way does it appropriate any funds for any public charter schools for facilities. What it does is simply give each public charter school the opportunity to work with their county governments, if that county government chooses to help create a levy and finance the facilities for them to exist. Now, this is not a new or novel idea. States like Alaska, Colorado, Florida, New Mexico, Michigan, and Washington State all have exact similar styles of financing through localities to levy a tax for public charter schools in their region. And many of these states go to voters asking for voters to vote on behalf of the school district and the public charter school, receiving well over 80 to 90% support from the community for those levies. So a vote in affirmation for this legislation does not immediately create that opportunity for high-paying jobs or the schools to own their facilities, but what it does is provide a tool in the toolbox for many of the school districts, the public charter schools, and the counties to work collaboratively and provide more money to facilities so they can own them, as well as sending more money back into the classroom. If it pleases the chair, I'd like to do a brief walkthrough of the bill. It is very brief, and we can stand and be ready for any questions that the committee might have. Section 1 creates the State Public Charter School Facility Fund. This is where the revenues generated by a possible levy may go. The fund operates similar to other funds underneath the Treasury. The fund is used to pay off debt to build and maintain the new facilities, and a public charter school has to apply to the SBCSA in order to access these funds for appropriate use outlined in the bill. Section 2 gives each board of county commissions the opportunity, if they choose, to levy a tax to pay for charter school facilities in their county. Furthermore, it does instruct that the county deposits those revenues in the State Public Charter School Facility Fund in the Treasury. And that concludes the bill. Thank you.
We're now open for questions.
Thank you so much. And we do have a couple questions. We'll start with Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. If you could just help me understand a little bit better and walk me through how these, I know that you're referring to them as public charter schools, but not all charter schools are created equally in the state of Nevada. And so, for example, I believe that Academica is owned by a private for-profit corporation based in Florida. And so if that is the case, can you just walk me through how some of these schools are actually owned in the state of Nevada, and how putting public dollars into the actual facilities for which they own the buildings, which is my understanding, where does that money then fit into the overall profit scheme of those for-profit corporations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Assemblymember Roth, Eddie Ablisser for the record. So I heard two questions there, and thank you for the questions because these have been comments that we've heard at the legislature for a couple of years. The comments are not truthful. I will identify that there is a company called Academica. It's based in Florida. That company is owned separately. It is a separate company outside of the purview of what happens in Nevada. There's a separate company. It is a business. It's called Academica Nevada, and it established itself simply to provide services to public charter school boards if those public charter school boards choose to hire Academica Nevada. There are many other companies similar to Academica Nevada. Opportunity 180 provides services to their schools from a nonprofit status. Legacy Heritage, there are many other companies that provide services. Now let's talk about the services. The services are a variety of essential back office services that schools need to operate. Everything from cleaning, janitorial, special education, student information systems, legal, accounts payable, accounts deliverable, working on helping with figuring out how do you do and get substitute teachers. There's a litany of services that these schools need. Now, some schools get those services in piecemeal approach and neglect other aspects of the services. So they might not deal with any of the legal ramifications that goes into developing an IEP for a student with significant disability. What Academica Nevada has done at really, and I want to brag about my client for a second, the cheapest rate in the entire state, and that includes districts as well, they provide back office supports for schools. That said, they are simply a vendor. These boards are submitted a contract. The boards, which are public, governmental boards, vote on those contracts. They can vote to eliminate the contract. They can eliminate the relationship with Academica. In another committee, I testified that the state recently, about 3 years ago, public charter school voted to eliminate 2 separate management organizations because of some of the things that were happening with them. So there is no ownership. There's no, direction. It is simply vendor board relationships, simply that similar to how our districts operate. Districts hire a variety of vendors. I was at the Washoe County School District and spoke with Chair Smith at that committee. They were talking a little bit about what happened in Northern Nevada with Matter Academy. And I mentioned that on their agenda, they approved, I think it was over $87 million of private contracts just on one district agenda. That's very similar. I mean, they don't have $87 million, right? These charter schools are small, but it's very similar. It's, sorry.
May I, Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just so I can direct kind of where I'm trying to get at with these questions. So the question is, who owns the buildings that the public dollars are going to? Because, you know, to be clear, when we have public schools, those schools are owned by the taxpayers.
Yep.
Those are the people's schools, right? But somebody owns academic schools in the state of Nevada. And so those public dollars are going to be paid in rent to a corporation. So who is that corporation that those public dollars are going to go to? And what are their profit margins? How much money are they making on owning the real estate for which our public dollars are going to pay for?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Assemblymember Roth. Eddie
You can go
Abloser.
directly to the member.
Okay. Eddie Abloser for the record. So this bill, let me start with this bill. Any building, any facility, anything is owned by the state of Nevada. They are bonded, levied. It would go through the authority. It's through the Treasury. If the school fails, I think there were some of you in education, if the school has 1 stars for 3 years in a row, that school fails, that school shuts down. The building, if that school exists, belongs to the state. It goes to the state, that board is absolved.
So who does the rent go to?
So without this bill, where we're at today, there are a couple of schools that are owned by the state of Nevada through the board. So there are a couple of schools that have been built using prevailing wage, and they are owned by that school board. But if that school happens to fail, the state recovers all of those assets. There are probably 90% of the schools are in leases and rents to strip malls, to vendors that have created, property for them, that have renovated properties. It's very similar to what the state of Nevada does. When I was the administrator, we rented space here in Carson City. It's not owned by the state. It's owned by a property owner that they're responsible for the function of that building. So many
Okay.
property owners.
So just for clarity, the public dollars will be going into schools that pay rent to private corporations that make a profit off of owning the schools, correct?
Greg Koenig for the record. So if the charter school doesn't have a property, they're going to pay rent. This would allow them to build their own facilities, which would then at that point be state property. If the charter school paying rent goes out of business, then the landlord's got to find another tenant. If the charter school is able to build facilities with this and they go out of business, this would revert back to the state.
If I can, Assembly Member, I'm going to jump in because I think I see where it's going, and I think there's a provision in the bill that wouldn't make sense even in a bonding situation. My understanding when the state and counties or the authority that's doing the bonding, it's usually intended for what you guys are talking about, the construction of a building. However, when you look at the bill, under Section 1, subsection 7D, I think what's giving some heartburn here is it has that the executive director may request that the State Board of Finance issue bonds secured by the money in and revenue of the fund to finance under D, the rental or lease of building or grounds from a public or private landlord for a charter school. And I think it's that provision right there, and I'm sure at other layers, but how you guys are presenting the bill sounds like it would be consistent with how the public school district does some of their capital funding, and I believe only Clark and Washoe counties. It's not throughout the whole state. But if you could, I think, kind of go there, because that's where I think everyone's kind of focused.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblymember Roth, Eddie Abloser for the record. So in Section 17D, I think this was a request by our small schools who believe that they can't afford to pay, find a way to pay, and this is where there's like 40 or 50 schools. My understanding is that at the county level, our school districts rent buildings as well, or rent facilities as well. And that was what was told to me through sort of an LCB conversation, that this is a typical function. If it is a heartburn of the committee, this is certainly not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill is to build buildings, to create more jobs, but this was contemplated as a result of many of our small schools who don't see an opportunity, like for 60 kids to build a school, to have that school. But that's a conversation, Assemblymember Roth, that I'd be more than happy to have with you. And if that's something that can, because again, let me be clear, the intent of the bill is to build buildings. It is not to provide rent. And, but it was my understanding that school districts have this provision allowable within their levy as well.
We'll go ahead and we'll go to Assemblymember, actually, before I go to Assemblymember Golding, let me also ask another question along that same line. Is so when the money's being used, obviously, like, for example, when it's used in Clark County for our public Clark County School District schools and they're building or acquiring land, it would be held by Clark County. Here, it looks like the money would be held in a trust, and if a new building was constructed for a specific charter school, who would then, I guess, own the land and the building at the time the charter school is still in operation?
Madam Chair, Eddie Ablisser for the record. It's still my understanding underneath 7 that everything goes through that facility fund. And it's my belief that the state owns that property and owns that building.
Thank you. With that, I'll go to Assemblymember Golding.
Thank you, Chair. That was actually exactly my question. However, I'd like some clarification on the answer, because my understanding was that that charter schools are typically a nonprofit corporation. Is that correct?
So
They're not a legal entity.
Every public, Eddie Alvis for the record, Assemblymember Golding, every public charter school has to file with the Secretary of State as a nonprofit corporation.
So
the boards.
My understanding was that at least some charter schools that own their own buildings, then that nonprofit owns the building. It's not actually owned by the school district.
Madam Chair, Assemblymember Golding, Eddie Alvis for the record, it's my understanding also that every public district has to file as a nonprofit corporation as well. So it's all schools. Should that nonprofit corporation fail and dissolve, it's my understanding that is an asset of the state.
Is it common for regular school districts to fail and have to dispose of their school buildings?
Madam Chair, Assemblymember Golding, Eddie Alvis for the record. Great question. That was part of the 2019 conversation in which the Assembly bill created an accountability measure that only exists for public charter schools. If a public charter school receives a 1-star 3 years in a row, it is to be shut down. And it is a bill that members of this committee are contemplating in the Education Committee. Unlike school districts, which cannot be shut down, public charter schools can be shut down. And if that were to happen, it's my understanding that the state would take control of those assets. Under this bill, absolutely, they would take control of those assets. But it's my understanding these are public charter school boards. They're public governmental boards, and they're underneath the purview of the state. If they fail or if they get closed by their authorizer, the assets then go to the state.
Follow-up? One of the things you mentioned was the charter school boards, and that the charter school boards are accountable. Are charter school boards elected by the public that is providing the funding for those schools?
Assemblymember Golding, Eddie Alvis for the record. Many of our public charter school boards are tiny and small, just like many of our commissions, tiny and small, and they're appointed in a variety of ways. That 2019 law that was contemplated create very specific membership guidelines on who can serve and who should serve on public charter school boards. I think that is an interesting policy question. I know that I've heard many members talk about our elected district school board members, and sometimes maybe we should reflect on appointed public district school board members at points. And I think because of the amount and the ability to run elections in those many boards, the decision in 2019, I think, was to create appointment authority.
But there's not a direct relationship between accountability to the public for those public dollars. Is that correct?
Assemblymember Golding, Eddie Abelson for the record, I wouldn't capitulate it that way. I believe there's a very strong accountability measure by the authorizer. The authorizer, whether now it's cities get to authorize, but the authorizer rips through every transparency financial document of a public charter school board and how they operate, and they can shut that board down. So I think, in my opinion, the accountability is higher than what districts have to deal with, because these schools can get shut down immediately if there is impropriety in their action.
Just one more follow-up. Have you served on a charter school board and seen how charter school board members are selected?
Assemblymember Golding, Eddie Abelson for the record. I've had the privilege of serving in a variety of elected bodies. I was a former Democratic state senator from Arizona and minority whip for the assembly, for the state house in Arizona. I was elected to a district in Arizona as well, and I was appointed to a public charter school board here in Nevada as well. So I've had quite a bit of experience around, a variety of education things, and I will tell you, in my observation on 2019 on the appointment of those boards, it is a very intense process. It is a very scrutinized process. It's a very transparent process. And when I was appointed, everything had to go to the authority. I had to show my qualifications, my background, my mission statement, and so I think the amount of oversight over our public charter school board members is pretty phenomenal. And there's board trainings and how to operate, and Robert's Rules of Orders, public meeting, open meeting laws.
I'm glad to hear that. I think that must have changed since my experience on a charter school board. So I'm happy to hear that that's changed.
Thanks so much. Next, we will go to Assemblymember De Silva.
Thank you, Chair. I just got a quick two-part question. So firstly, so the two ways that this building fund would be funded would be through donations, and then secondly would be through this proposed tax, correct? And then the second part of the question is that this would be an additional tax that would be now actually created or ordained by the local county on top of any other taxation that already currently exists, correct? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Eddie Abelson for the record. Assemblymember De Silva, yes, this is, the fund can receive funds from two different sources, two different directions, right? Donations, gifts, grants that can be deposited, or the funds from the county levy as they produce those revenues. I think your question about the county levy is, it is a new county levy. Obviously, the question that many counties, and I'm going to use my home county of Washoe County, there was a question on WC1, which the community did a phenomenal job in supporting and raising it up. That's a fund that goes directly to the resources as contemplated and as voters voted on. That is not something that this bill can touch. This would have to be a new piece of legislation, new question to voters in order to contemplate that levy.
Our last question is going to come from Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you. So if this measure is successful and there's a county government that chooses to levy a property tax with bonds issued to benefit charter schools, what happens, or what entity is responsible for paying the bonds if the property does not generate sufficient revenue to pay the bonds?
Assemblywoman Considine Ediapolis, for the record, it's my understanding that the bond, how I'm understanding it, and perhaps we can have that conversation, the bond wouldn't be issued without the appropriate levy and measures in place to pay off the bond, and the bond issued, by the Committee on Finance. So that, in the State Board of Finance, in making their decision, would have to contemplate whether or not the revenues are sufficient enough to pay that off. Now, let's just pull that string a little. Should the levies not support the ability to pay off that bond, I think many of these public charter schools are back to square one, where they have to dip into per pupil or DSA to pay their facilities.
So in that potentially rare but case, so then they would be forced to dip into the student pupil funding. There would be no other options for them.
Eddie Abelser, for the record, Assemblymember Considine, perhaps the gifts and, grants, maybe, and that school would have to be very creative to try to find a way to pay off that bond, obviously. Hopefully the bond rates are good and the terms of the bond are appropriate. Working with the State Board of Finance is a credible opportunity for many of these schools. If the county decides to create that levy, I have to assume that the Board of Finance has contemplated the amount of money in that levy. But should, in that rare occasion, happen, I think it would be appropriate, because the only, when you think about bond payment, the only revenue that public charter school is getting is DSA. And so, or per pupil funding, sorry, per pupil, yeah. So I think that would pay it off.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Koenig, and also Mr. Abelsar. If you guys can step back, we'll go ahead and take the hearing to testimony in support of Assembly Bill 435. We'll start here in Carson City. And Ms. Adler, whenever you're ready, please feel free to start.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This was a great discussion, and I wish I had more than 2 minutes, but I will be quick. I would like to direct your attention to Section 2, Sub 3B, where it says the Board of County Commissioners may levy a tax for the payment of interest for a charter school. The only way, honestly, that I see that this bill might live going forward is where a county works in partnership for all of its public schools, where it may be issuing a school bond for repair or construction of new traditional schools, and at the same time it has an appreciation for what public charter schools offer, and it decides that together the school bond could encompass both types of public schools. So and I was going to use Carson Montessori, where my granddaughters attend. Carson City could need to float a bond for school improvement or construction. It has a great relationship with Carson Montessori. It could decide that it would go to the voters and say, with this property tax levy, you're going to fund both types of public schools. Because right now, the parents at Jessica's school are paying property tax, and it is not able to go and support the public school of their choice. So I will wrap it up there. I think that's the beauty of this bill. Thank you very much.
For the record, Jessica Barlow Daniels, Carson Montessori Charter School. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary. And the original bonding bill for charter schools, which we thought would work and operate just like it did for districts, we discovered was nothing more than a mortgage. It was my student legislative team that lobbied it through the legislature, got it passed, and then we discovered when we tried to purchase something, it was nothing more than a mortgage. and so it did not have the bonding capacity. I am a political subdivision of the state of Nevada. That is my official designation. Everything that I have, we would never agree to let our school be closed. We are real champion fighters. However, if it did, everything I have belongs to the state of Nevada. In working with another charter school that did end up getting closed that had purchased their own building, the state came in, the state had the sale of the building, received all the funds from it, and all the material inside of it, all of your desks, all of everything that you have belongs to the state of Nevada. I do want you to add one thing when they said that the State Public Charter School Authority is where it goes, or like the city of Henderson. I am still sponsored by the Carson City School District, so I want to make sure that that stays in that bill, so that they also, the funding, they would have access to it the way that it is written, because they just listed those two entities. I am in a position right now where my school is faced with, we are being evicted from where we are because our permit has expired. I'm in an industrial area that I cannot be allowed to be in. And so I'm having to find a new site after 20 years of success. Would this help me greatly? Absolutely. Because I'd much rather pay my money to the state of Nevada than to a private person that I have to lease from. And yes, they do make that money when you lease from them. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Backus and members of the committee. For the record, Amy Sjogren, that's S-H-O-G-R-E-N, with Black & Wadhams, here on behalf of Opportunity 180, a nonprofit organization working towards the North Star of every kid graduating high school, college, and career ready. Opportunity 180 supports efforts to expand the number of innovative high potential charter schools that serve zip codes and student populations that have historically had the least amount of access to opportunities for high quality educational experiences. We support AB 435 because it will create an additional avenue for public charter schools to receive funding, addressing one of the primary funding imbalances faced by the charter school sector. Charter schools are free, public, and open to all students. Legislation such as AB 435 that creates innovative pathways to address parity regarding Nevada's public schools are critical to allowing public charter schools to focus more resources in the classroom and less on overhead. For these reasons, we support AB 435. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Backus. Members of the committee, Nicole Rourke, representing the city of Henderson. First, I'd like to thank Assemblyman Koenig and the proponents of the bill for including local government-sponsored schools as eligible recipients of this funds if they choose to apply. We have heard firsthand from many of the schools in our community with challenges they face in securing facilities, and so for those reasons, we support this bill. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Backus, Vice Chair Considine, members of the committee. My name is Wesley Harper. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We echo the sentiments of the City of Henderson. This would be a benefit and a resource for our city as we walk down the road of authorizing charter schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 435?
Hello, Chair Backus, Vice Chair, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Gil Lopez. I'm here with the Charter School Association of Nevada, here in support of AB 435. We do want to thank this bill sponsor for bringing this important legislation forward, as well as acknowledging the hard work of those who contributed to its development, Meridian Nevada, West Public Affairs, and our partners with Tri Strategies. AB 435 represents a promising step towards supporting not only charter schools, but potentially district schools as well by establishing a mechanism to assist with acquiring, improving, and expanding educational facilities. While we continue to work towards a long-term dedicated solution for charter schools facility funding, this bill offers a meaningful progress in the right direction. We respectfully urge you to support AB 435, and once again, thank the sponsor for the leadership in this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 435?
To testify in support for Assembly Bill 435, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair Baucus, Vice Chair Captioning, members of the Assembly Revenue Committee. My name is Ignacio Prado. I'm the Executive Director, Founder, and Principal of Futuro Academy Charter School, a single-site public independent charter school located in East Las Vegas. AB 435 is going to be a critical step towards strengthening an overall ecosystem by addressing the one critical and most critical challenge of any charter school to ever get off the ground, which is access to affordable and sustainable facilities. I do want to touch on a point around some consternation around the use of leasing. And so having been an independent school founder of a school that started very small, we had 110 students and 13 staff members. We simply don't have the typical traditional metrics to access products like bonds or even a traditional mortgage as a brand new organization. So things like 3 years of audited statements, 120 days cash on hand, those are metrics that are kind of the minimum to access these types of products or programs, and simply would not be possible for an organically grown school that was founded by a local teacher like me who worked in the Clark County School District immediately prior to founding our school. And so I'm very thankful for the thoughtful questions. Sure, the sponsors are open to any number of safeguards, regulations that might be necessary to ensure that the dollars are put to the right use and in a fiscally responsible way. But not addressing the rent issue would simply favor large schools and large school systems within the charter sector, potentially heavily to the detriment of small, innovative, and organically grown organizations in our sector. And so I do urge you to support AB 4035 and to address those concerns.
And thank you. Before you hang up, can you state your name and spell it slowly and what charter school you were with? Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. My name is Ignacio Prado, IGNACIO. Last name Prado, PRADO. And our charter school is Futuro, FUTURO Academy Charter School.
Thank you so much. If we can go to the next caller.
Chair, we have no more callers for support at this time.
Okay, then we'll go to testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 435. We'll start here in Carson City. Doesn't look like anyone's making their way to the dais. So we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 435? AVH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 435?
To testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 435, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association. We oppose Assembly Bill 435, creating a charter school facility fund and authorizing a school district to increase the property tax for that fund. Chartered for Profit, a report by the Network for Public Education, highlights significant issues with for-profit EMOs like Academica. While technically prohibited from directly running charter schools, EMOs exploit legal loopholes by setting up nonprofit boards that function as mere fronts, allowing EMOs to control school operations and finances. Charter for Profit details how EMOs engage in self-dealing, where related party transactions funnel public funds into privately owned real estate and service contracts, often with little oversight. The lack of transparency and accountability in these arrangements undermines the original mission of charter schools and diverts taxpayer dollars away from classrooms and student learning. Last year, NSCA and the Washoe Education Association opposed the expansion of Academica's Matter Academy into the North Valleys in Reno. The new Matter Academy is slated to be built immediately next to Washoe County's Alice Smith Elementary School, a Washoe County school district currently at 72% capacity. The SPCA approval process had no regard for students and the educators at that elementary school or any school in the Washoe County School District. In fact, the Washoe County School District notified the Charter Authority that 1,460-seat charter schools in that location would cause the closure of at least one elementary school. It's painfully clear that profit motive and not community interest drove the decision to cite Matter Academy in that location, and we would ask for your opposition in Assembly Bill 435. Thank you.
Chair, we have no more callers for opposition.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and move to neutral testimony. We'll start here in Carson City. I don't see anyone in Carson City. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 435? ABH, is there anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 435?
Chair, we have no callers for neutral.
At this time, we'll go ahead and invite the bill sponsor back up for some closing remarks.
Greg Koenig for the record. Thanks, Chair Backus, for your time and consideration. Just listening to the last caller, the NSEA, the unions are against this. But think of us who are on the money committees or who are on Ways and Means, that every single time that there is a hearing on anything to do with education, we get dozens and dozens of teachers from the teachers union complaining how underfunded the schools are and how we are $4,000 per student under what the average is. And all they complain about is how much money we don't give them. Consider if they had to be taking their money and using that for their rent and their facilities. Just think how loud they'd be screaming at that point. I mean, there's no other way for these someone can come up with another way somehow, potentially somewhere. But at this point, there's no other way for charter schools to have facilities. And how is it fair that we say, here's your pot of money, public schools, take that and spend it on your kids. Charter schools, here's the same pot of money, pay your rent and everything else, and then whatever you have left over, use it on your kids. I mean, to me, that just isn't fair. I mean, we're doing a levy, which is up to the voters to decide whether or not they want to do that. We're not forcing anybody. If every community in the state votes we don't want to do this, then nothing happens. But if there is a community that does value all of their kids and is willing to vote to do this, it gives them that option. It's not mandatory, it's permissive. And so this is just giving them a chance to potentially be able to have some money towards facilities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 435. And we'll go ahead and open the hearing on Assembly Bill 453. So I'm happy to welcome Assembly Member Anderson and Senator Neal, our former chair of this wonderful committee. So welcome back.
So good evening, Chair Backus, Vice Chair Considine, and members of the Committee on Revenue. I am Natha Anderson, and I have the privilege of representing Assembly District 30 in Sparks. I am joined today by Senator Dina Neal of Senate District 4. Thank you for allowing us to present Assembly Bill 453, which reviews various provisions related to taxation. More specifically, AB 453 aims to modernize the state's tax system by addressing the digital economy. The initial bill also dealt with two other areas. Those areas have been removed. In other words, I'm not going to be dealing with anything that has to do with lowering the conceptual amendment, actually takes away the changes that I had proposed possibly of changing the current commerce tax. So all of those items that were in that area no longer are considerations. And then also making any sort of changes to the current live entertainment tax to include sports teams, professional sports teams. That again is no longer a consideration. So if you'd please remove that from your thought process. Instead, the bill is concentrating on the digital economy. The last thing that is also there's two other parts to the conceptual amendment, and the first one that is part of that is to add joint sponsors of Assemblymember Considine and Senator Neal. So with that, I'm just going to start off with the digital economy. Just a little bit of background information. As many of us know, the digital economy has grown rapidly, with digital products becoming integral to daily life. However, Nevada's existing laws often fail to account for these intangible goods, leading to potential revenue gaps. Assembly Bill 453 addresses these challenges. E-commerce has been an essential part of consumer spending habits, accounting for 16.1% of total sales nationwide, according to the U.S. Census Bureau from 2023. Those are just numbers, but here are some specifics. And I'm going to use one of my favorite pastimes of reading. There are some who love the feel of a book, whether it is, and I can show you a few different books. When you go into Grassroots in Reno, or you go to the Writer's Block in Las Vegas. This is a great book, by the way. If you haven't read Starter Villain, you should. You buy the book, you pay the tax, you go home, and you get lost in a new world. You're able to enjoy yourself. Then there are some, one of our peers, who will use his ebook, a Kindle, or an iPad. And in this same little book, you're going to have 4 or 5 or 40 books. It's much easier to carry. There's no question. And again, you're going to go through the same process. You're going to look for that perfect story. You're going to buy it, and then you're going to sit at home. It's missing an essential area. There's no tax that is given on these ebooks. There are, however, in other states. If you go to our neighbors in Utah, you would pay a tax consistent with the tax on the hard or physical copy of 4.85. If you bought it in Arizona, the sales tax would be 5.6%. Idaho, 6%. California, 7.2%. And some of our non-neighbors, including Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, who I just realized I've got a misprint of taxes. Oh well, there will be a tax. In other words, there are currently 38 states, as well as Washington, D.C., which actually tax digital goods in some form. Nevada is not one of them. Our sales and use tax needs to be adjusted to reflect a changing world. This is found in, it's in the bill, I promise. We need to catch up with national standards. And this is not a new tax. It is taxing digital products in a similar way to how physical products are taxed. It doesn't create a new burden. It is attempting to modernize our tax system to ensure large corporations pay their fair share. In a way, it is closing a loophole which exists due to products being sold in a different way other than the brick and mortar businesses. And that actually brings up one more area that has nothing to do with revenue, but everything to do with community. Our small businesses. Remember that I talked about Grassroots, Writer's Block. I did not mention Sundance in Reno. I did not mention Morley Books, which was once 2.5 blocks up from our building here in Carson, or Whitney's Bookshelf in Tonopah. Sadly, all have closed. These closures are not 100% due to a change in how society is buying products, but this is, however, a contributing factor. And it's not just mom and pop stores. Think about retail chains. They are closing as well. Think about how, as a teenager, and maybe this is just me, you would go to a record store to browse the CDs, hang out with your friends. Those no longer exist. Whether you went to Blockbusters to look for videos, which again, no longer exist, Tower Records, Warehouse Records, these locations are no longer around. And part of that is because of a digital area. We have moved into this new world. With the chair's permission, I would like to turn it over to Senator Neal to continue, as she has been working on this language for 3 sessions. It just feels like 4. If I may, Chair Bacchus. Senator Neal?
Thank you. Senator Neal, for the record, it's good to be back in Assembly Revenue. Spent a lot of time here. But when you guys look at AB 453, you need to think about it in terms of we need to modernize our actual sales tax statutes. This isn't necessarily, for me, the journey has been not about the excise tax, but it's been about how are we going to update our statutes for what is actually now the way in which we have products delivered to ourselves. And so one thing I've consistently done in every hearing that I've had since, well, my attempts in 2019 when I moved Marketplace Facilitator and we were able to then get Amazon into our tax base. It was a huge move, right? Because we knew that products were being sold online, not just in brick and mortar space. It's the same thing that's happening with digital goods. That physical product is transformed now into a digital product, and sometimes it even has a crossover between the product itself and a service that may be attached to it. And so I'm just going to take you guys quickly down memory lane. If anybody is familiar with Minnie Riperton, I think I tried to do that, Mr. Nakamoto on the Senate revenue side in 21. And you guys have to thank your fiscal staff, Mr. Nakamoto, because these are his wonderful collection of things. So if you remember your grandparents or your parents who had the wonderful 8-track and that car from 1970s, and they would stick it in there and say, oh my goodness, we're going for a ride in the Cadillac. So we have Bruce Springsteen, 8-track, right? I know, right? I know there's some that can know. You have to go back to the grandparents and the parents. It's just a way to kind of bring you into the space of how the product itself is no longer sold, nor is it a part of the current commerce and market. And so on top of that, we have a Michael Jackson Thriller 8-track. Now that's going way back. I mean, but the fact that it is in 8-track form gives you a very special appreciation for the fact that these used to be in every vehicle, right? Before they had cassettes. And then we upgraded, right? And then this is one of the favorites for Mr. Nakamoto, the Marky Mark cassette CD. I mean, actually, it's the cassette. He probably has the CD, but the cassette. So we have the upgrading, right? So we have this memory lane where we go from 8 tracks to then you were in the car and you could just slide the cassette in, or you had your boom box when you were 15, if you were in the 80s and the 90s, and your parents were saying, hey, listen, I'm gonna need that only on 6 o'clock. Don't let it bother my TV because I'd like to watch PBS in peace. And so we had our TDK tapes where if we didn't have the cassette, we would listen to the radio, press the button, and record what the radio was playing. And we would press our parents, and you have to think about the durable goods in addition to the cassette that you might have went and purchased at the music store. But there are durable goods that as we grew into this market are no longer sold as the companion items. And so when you think about the tax base and you think about what's missing, think about the product that's now digital, think about the companion durable good that used to be sold with it so that you could participate. And so with this one, I mean, who didn't like Lionel Richie, okay? So the cassette that is Mr. Nakamoto's wonderful collection of Lionel Richie, and I don't know which one this was, but I'm almost positive that I don't know any of these songs. But because we're just in the music. Now we go to the wonderful CDs, right? So we have the car that advances from the 8-track to the cassette to now the CDs in which we place in. How many of you, because currently you get a car with a CD, you're saying, man, how old is this? Because your Apple, iTunes, right, or Android Auto, you're connecting from your phone physically to the digital media in which you plan on consuming music. And then, I probably should have did this one first, but if anybody grew up with the 45, okay, the actual all right, we have Assemblyman O'Neill. I mean, so in this one, I don't know how he got this, but if anybody actually loves Steve Martin, this is, Steve Martin actually did a 45 of King Tut. Okay, so if anybody, right? I mean, we all probably grew up with Steve Martin, and who's the other guy was in the Three Amigos, right? And Martin Short. So the fact that he even, I'm sure this sold about 5 copies. But the point is, a 45 used to be in our genre, and it used to be in our space. And he gave me something that was completely awesome, because he had a 45 of Morris Day and the Time. Now you know this has to be a collector's piece. And then he went, and this, I've never seen these in my life, but apparently at one point we used to roll serious tape, and this was Barry Manilow. And so why we can see Barry Manilow on the strip, but apparently he's been around so long that it wasn't even a cassette. It was literally roll the tape. I have no idea, but the durable good that was associated with this is surely extinct. But when you think about the growth of our tax base, right, and how we've changed, we have to consider how we need to modernize our current statute, because currently the statutes that are in place that we have in Nevada still are taxing this, but it's not being sold. It has transformed into a digital form. And so, because I have to give full credit to all of the goodies that Mr. Nakamoto gave me to give him joy while he sits in revenue in 2 houses, he then had John Travolta, Saturday Night Fever CD. I mean, you can't get any better than that one, okay? I mean, the fact that Saturday Night Fever came in a CD, I know that I was like very young, and we all watched that on TV. And then he had the full album of Kool and the Gang. I mean, wow, okay? But just think deeply about this. I know, because then he got, and this is probably another one that sold about 5 albums, was Mr. T did an album. I didn't know that, okay, until Mr. Nakamoto showed this to me. And I was like, for real, he did it? Mr. T, right? I was like, wow, this sold to no one. But the point of the props and the reference at this late hour is to help you guys come to the conclusion that we need to modernize our sales tax statutes. We actually need to move forward, and I've been on this journey for a really, really long time, because in this journey, you know, we talk about Pandora, we talk about Spotify, we talk about, which is now Netflix, Prime, I believe it's Peacock, not Pluto, that charges. Tubi is free. But even when you get online and you do your exercise videos, where back in the day, if you were doing Richard Simmons and you were putting it in as the VHS, or if you were I don't know why you would have a cassette of that, but a VHS, or you were watching it, that no longer is the way that you even exercise, right? I mean, we currently have, you would get, I mean, this is almost 5 years where you have the mirror, right? You exercise in front of the mirror, and it's sold with a service, because you want to visualize this other person who's working out with you. And so even when you think about how just exercising and subscriptions associated with just a simple digital shift in the common areas in which we function, that is all changed. And so AB 453 is attempting to move us into 2025 and really help us to modernize our sales tax statutes so that we can actually live in this particular time period and tax the current goods with an excise tax that are not these goods, and hopefully potentially stabilize our sales tax revenue with the inclusion of these now transformed and modernized goods. And with that, I'll open up for questions.
Actually, I do have a little bit more to add. Thank you, sorry. Don't worry, I will not be showing you any more props. Well, maybe. I do want to make sure also it's very clear about the conceptual amendment. There was one more item that I had asked for, and that was if the Economic Forum, I believe all of you should have a copy of it, and it's also is available on Nellis. If the Economic Forum predicts a decrease of more than 7%, transferable tax credits shall be reviewed by the legislature for possible changes to authorization of transferable tax credit, including any necessary changes of the amount of transferable tax credit being issued in the biennium. And then we also talked about the funds from the rainy day fund. But the reason why I brought this forward is as we contemplate more and more transferable tax credits, we need to consider the impact on our state and the fluid national economic outlooks. When we consider the fact that when there are open contracts that are helping our own legislative body, and this building in particular, which these contracts were entered, and yet these same contracts have been put on alert. We found out about that they could be adjusted. We found out about that during a joint Senate Finance Assembly Ways meeting on March 7th due to tariffs. Shouldn't the Nevada State Legislature be able to utilize this same business model? We need to be more aware of what can happen if the Economic Forum does not come back with an increase of funds, and we as a state are already promising away the credits and unable to pay for essential services our neighbors, our communities, our constituents, and our state needs. And at that point now, sorry to bring down the levity, but I think we're ready for questions if you like, or we can also walk through the bill as you see fit.
Why don't you guys go ahead and walk through the bill? I mean, I kind of think everyone gets the gist. Oh, never mind. I think maybe if there's a question specifically, to go ahead and touch on that portion. I'm going to go ahead and start with Assemblymember Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Neal, good to see you back. Hope you're feeling well. One thing that you failed to mention, though, I mean, with the digital products, you got to have the digital device, and these things aren't cheap. We pay a lot of tax on these when we purchase them. I mean, especially when they're running $1,200, $1,300. So I just, we're not paying the tax on the digital, download, but we are paying it on the other side. So, and actually, we're paying quite a bit more now. Just wondering why the difference? I mean, why go after these now when we're paying more somewhere else?
Thank you for the question, Senator Neal, for the record. So you can make the argument that that particular durable good is somehow being, it is taxed, but there is a complete loss of revenue, right? Because we have not picked up the shift and the change. So when a product itself has now transformed and become digital, and that was a small sample, but there's hundreds of products that have actually become digital. They are not in our sales tax base. This is about modernization. This isn't about some hungry movement. For me, it's policy. It's about updating the actual statute to go after it. And we've also seen that the sales tax also dips and is one of the major revenues that comes into the state. And so one of my position for tax policy purposes and revenue is that we should always be thinking about past, present, and future. We should always be trying to consider how do we modernize and move forward, especially when not just several, but hundreds of products have changed form and they are no longer in our tax base. And you could be of the opinion, that's fine. They're extinct, they shouldn't be in the tax base. But I disagree because I feel, and it's 3 sessions in, trying to have this conversation about how do we shift and grow with how goods are currently being consumed in their current form.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That made me actually Google something. So I was like, I wonder, because I remember when there's very pricey, like when a new I guess I remember discs that played movies. Those very fancy laser discs came out. They were almost not attainable because the way how you would play it was very expensive. I just Googled how much a turntable could be, which would play records, which could be around $1,000, which is kind of interesting because that would be like an Apple phone. So the pricing of the equipment seems in parity. But with that, members, do we have any other questions for our presenters? I'll go to Assemblymember O'Neill.
This is quick and easy. How'd you come up with the number, or the 7% on the reduction? I was just curious. It's an odd number instead of 5. Usually people say 5, 3, 5.
Thank you. This is Assemblymember Anderson, through the chair to Assemblymember O'Neill. Thank you for asking that. I initially had thought of 10, and then honestly, I initially thought of 10. Wait, no, I initially thought of 5. And then talked with a few individuals who I trust on the some other money committees as well. And they were like, well, what do you think about 10? And so honestly, 7 was just the middle ground. That's where it was. I was thinking of 5% initially, and then this just had to do with just discussions. I'd be fine bringing it down to 5. Is that what I'm hearing?
You were doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the time.
Thank you so much. Oh, we'll go to Assemblymember Hafen.
Thank you, Chair. And it is great to see you back here, Senator Neal. I want to talk about the conceptual amendment, again, like my colleague mentioned, not how the calculation was, but how it would actually work. Because my understanding is a lot of the tax credits, like the film tax, you make the movie and then you go back afterwards retroactively to apply for those credits, anticipating that they're going to be there. And Senator Neal, you could probably touch on how the new market tax credits work a little bit better than anyone here. And so I'm just trying to figure out what the ramifications would be on those when people are anticipating them, and then heaven forbid the economic forum comes back less. And basically, are we pulling the rug out from underneath them, or how's that going to? How do you envision this conceptual amendment working?
Assemblymember Anderson, for the record, thank you. Through the chair to Assemblymember Hafen, thank you for the question. Because when I brought this up, all I was thinking of was we've got to start being responsible, and we've got to start thinking about how other businesses are able to make these changes. So first of all, the reason why I was thinking of this was it would be for future tax credits. I'm not thinking about the past, because absolutely, those items have already been present. Some other people might have a different opinion, but I believe it's only moving forward. So because of that, then there would need to be some policy language that would be developed that would not be part of this. Quite frankly, I would think that we would have to have that in all agreements from here on out, that there is a possibility that these will be looked at over a biennium based upon what the economic forum comes back. So that way, whenever companies come in expecting a tax credit, they are aware of how this would work. And so it would not be a shock to the system. That is what I believe currently happens in many other businesses when there is a need to renegotiate or an open contract because of changes in the supplies that they have to go forward with. Senator Neal, if you'd like to add to that.
I'm going to just quickly address the new markets piece, right? So under new markets, the credits are established. We know in, year 3, year 4, and I'm just going to give that example, year 3, 4, 5, how you have to pull them down. And so there is no way to go back and reverse that. I mean, but when, and I'm just going to, be transparent, but when I saw in the interim that different things were occurring with our general fund, I had the conversation, is there a way for me to pull these back? And can we come away from 2030, right? So I can think about how I can put revenue back into the state. And they said, absolutely not, right? I mean, ultimately, I had to run the course of whatever I extended with those new markets. But I was thinking, as much as I'm pro-business, as much as I'm trying to figure out how do I position a credit to move in a way to help small businesses, which has been the focus of New Markets, and in rural spaces, I was not able to pull it back. But I do think we need to have a conversation about where we go in the future, just because sustainability, we cannot sustain large amounts of credits coming off the books. But that's my 2 cents.
If I could follow up, thank you, Chair. So if I understand you correctly, the new market tax credits are kind of a 5-year obligation in concept. And so your proposal in the conceptual amendment would not strip away those obligations. It would only be, there would not be future obligations made, but the tax credits for the obligation that's been committed would already be there. Am I understanding that
Senator
correctly?
Neal, for the record, they cannot be stripped away. They're already dedicated. They're already, so whoever has applied for the new markets, they have to run the course through 2030 or whatever that date is in the bill. There is no, well, we would get sued. But if this bill, if that provision, that amendment moved, and then somehow they felt that their credit that they had been waiting for and working toward to do that qualified investment was going to be stripped, that is actually not a possibility, and it would open the state up to a lawsuit. I'm just being 100 with you, right? Because it is designated in statute that credit is available until that expiration date. And so in the balance of that conceptual, let me just put it, I just have to say it right there. If it can't be stripped away, or else we're going to be in a very interesting situation if using the new markets example.
And thank you for that clarification. And that is kind of my concern, is that based on the conceptual amendment that's being proposed, if it is not clear enough, there is potential for the state being sued over this. So I do appreciate it, and I agree with you, Senator, on that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And if I can add into Assemblymember Anderson for this, when this was being proposed, there was no discussion at all about the new market credits. So that, I want to make sure that's clear. There was never a consideration of how that all would be working together. And so that way you're aware of that. That was never part of those discussions with it. And I do not want to open us up for any sort of lawsuits. So that is one reason why this is for future discussions. If there's ever a future decision to be made for these items, that's how that would work.
Chair, can I ask another question off that answer? If the new market tax credit, is my understanding, and Senator Neal can correct me if I'm wrong, is the largest tax credit that's on our books, I believe. And then there's the film tax credits and the opportunity scholarship tax credit. So if you were not looking at the largest tax credit on the books, what were you considering with this amendment?
That would be more for, I believe, myself, Assemblymember Anderson. I was simply looking at how we're using it right now. I was not looking at specifics. I 100% own this. That was me just trying to do some new ideas. We'll 100% own that.
And thank you. And Assemblymember Anderson, so to make sure it was a prospective, looking at anything else that could potentially come in, whether it be through legislation, that could be a future tax credit. That was kind of what the purpose of this was.
Assemblymember Anderson, for the record, that is correct.
With that, we'll go to Assemblymember Gallant.
Thank you. I was able to listen to your presentation. I apologize. But I do have a question. I was just thinking, would this also include apps on our iPhone?
Yes. So if you look at the definitions, so we have other digital goods, we have a digital, audio, visual, but I think it's pretty much captured under the other digital product.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go last question. Let me go to Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you. My question is how do we collect the tax? I know that we have this streamlined sales tax right now that we are part of to ensure that those taxes for things that are purchased and mailed to us are done correctly, but how will that work for the digital taxes?
So currently in the bill, we have adopted we've adopted the exact statutes that allow the Department of Taxation to create the regs and do the tax imposition. So there are very specific statutes that lay out the exemptions, how it would be paid, and how the Department of Taxation, if this was to actual pass, to move forward. So if you look in section, I believe it's 27, there's a registration process. They have to register with the department, which is pursuant to 360B, and then any other sales tax statute is pretty much emulated to adopt conforming language. But if you look at that example in section 27, they register, they obtain a permit. One thing that came from the streamline process as we were doing this bill, I believe it was in 2021, where we had a conversation with SUDA. We had to make sure that we had our nexus language right, our location language. So if someone downloaded in the state, how we were actually going to be able to ID that download. And so we pretty much nailed that down because so if someone's out of state, we did it by location of where that person actually is. And so there is more detail, but that's pretty much how it was broken down, because SUDA was really on top of us on the excise piece and trying to make sure that we were in conformity. And at the time, I was on the executive board. And so we brought that bill to them, and they supported us to try to make sure that we were completely in line and we weren't going to violate.
Thank you so much for that. Quick question from Assemblymember Gray, and then we have one last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how is this going to happen? And so I did even think about buying something on a digital device when I'm out of state. I mean, I can go to one of the nomad states and pay no sales tax on something at all. So how are you guys going to track that and account for that? I mean, if I'm not physically here and making the purchase, I shouldn't be subject to the sales tax.
So, no. Is this something where Mr. Nakamoto can just kind of break this down on, because I believe we came down to, I know it was location, and I wasn't sure if we were doing it by because there's an actual, when you download, like we know, so just the same way as like Netflix will know that you are downloading from your home, right? Or whether or not you are downloading from a hotel, that subscription is still attached to you, whether or not you're in Arizona and you log in and you download, whether or not you go in and download from YouTube TV, it's attached to your address. It's also attached to your IP, right? And so that's the best way that I can break it down, is that if you're out of state and you use the Google TV or any of those things where you have a subscription, we know that you were a Nevada resident that downloaded it. And so, because it's naturally tied to that login. That's the simplest way I can do it without doing a legalese of Mr. Nakamoto.
Mr. Nakamoto, I know both of you have had a very long day, but would you like to chime in? Assemblymember Gray, we will follow up with you on that, because my mind's going like use aspect of that when you make it an out-of-state purchase. You're okay?
Madam Chair, Michael Nakamoto for the record. There are provisions in the bill, and I'm scrambling to find them very quickly, about how nexus for this tax is established. Once I find those, I can follow up with Assemblymember Gray. Thank you.
Sounds good. And our last question is going to come from Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation and the walk down memory lane. It is super awesome to see my Senator Neal, back here in the House. So that's awesome. When you were doing this, was there a way to look at any of the projections? It seems like it's so really cool, but as you were looking at it, were you looking at what those numbers would look like? Maybe we should get excited about that, but I'd like to.
Senator Neal, for the record, the actual projections are pretty low. I think what it was, 75 million or less. I'm literally turning it back over to you, because It was
Senator, I do
the
have some information as well, as
it
you're
was
saying.
the way that I could, and it was kind of a good thing that the projections came in low, because I was making the policy argument, not the revenue argument. I was making the argument that we needed to update and modernize the sales tax statute. And that when I first entered into this space, it was the same time that I was doing marketplace facilitator, right? When we were having this battle between the online stores and the brick and mortar, and the loss and the physical loss of human beings going into brick and mortar stores, right? And having that conversation around, well, why don't we also talk about the digital goods? And at the same time, I was thinking modernization, right? But if Assemblywoman Anderson has the numbers, I know they were low, and most people are just like, oh my God. But we also, and I just want to bring this fact up, that when we did Marketplace Facilitator, our projections weren't super high. But when we got into the actual passing of that legislation, it literally saved the state. And I had no idea. All I was focused on was that we needed parity between a brick and mortar and online retailers, and they were no longer in the space. And so when Wayfair came down, I was saying we should just do it all. And so it's something where I'm only mentioning this to you because a lot of you guys were not in the building in 2019, but it is something where when you measure the money versus the policy, and sometimes in revenue, you need to think about the policy, because at the time I was thinking about the policy. We had low projections, but it was a national change where we needed to move forward, and then it ended up being this astronomical number that came through and saved the day. And so my belief is that when we shift into this space, that we're going to see something change. Because if they're not registered, if we don't have that product, if they're not responsible to report to the Department of Taxation, how will we know until we get into that market, right? So in Marketplace Facilitator, we had no idea that in COVID, DoorDash would be our thing, that Uber Eats would be our thing, right? So these new products transform and then become a part of the base. But when it was passed, there was no DoorDash. You weren't Uber eating, and you certainly weren't Instacarting. And so now that is now a Marketplace Facilitator. So when you think about, I'm saying this to you, so when you think about policy, think about how things grow, transform, and shift, because consumers' behavior changes. And that is what I want you to focus on, and then she can give you a number, and then you can be like, oh, that's not really high, but think about it in terms of policy.
Thank you. And I do agree it should be about the policy. Assemblymember Anderson, for the record, I had emailed Mr. Nakamoto a few weeks ago, and he was able to provide me with some information. So this is for the digital products. They have prepared estimates of the potential tax base by looking at the Commerce Tax Nevada gross revenue reported in fiscal year 2024. It is a few sentences. Do you wish me to read the whole thing, Assemblymember Bacchus? Do you wish me just to?
Do you just have the total on the digital?
Totals. Okay, so this is again an estimate based on companies who they believe would be captured in the tax. So an estimated potential tax base of approximately $715 million in fiscal year 2026 and $743 million in fiscal year 2027. And then that would be about $14.9 million would be generated for the state general fund. And $18.5 million would be generated for the state education fund. And then and that would be for fiscal year 2026. 2027, it would be approximately $15.5 million would be generated for the state general fund, and approximately $19.3 million would be generated for the state education fund. And again, there is a concern that there could be some other companies that were excluded for some reason or another. And so there's a belief that this was a reasonable, but a little bit more on the conservative side for an estimate.
And just for the record, Senator Neal, you have to be clear that that's the 2% rate that goes into the general fund. I know logically we always think about what we pay in Clark County, but this is the 2% rate.
And then we also pick up the LSST, which was also what Assemblymember Anderson had said. With that, I thank you so much for your presentation. I think the only two alumni from the 2019 Senator Neal chaired committee is myself and Assemblymember Hafen. He popped. With that, thank you. We'll go ahead and start with testimony in support of Assembly Bill 453 here in Carson City.
Good, shall I begin? It's okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Adler. I'm here today as a grandmother and an education advocate. Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Waters, Cat Stevens, Tea for the Tillerman, you know, my jam. But I am in complete support of both parts of the amended bill. I am about the policy, the revenue, but also the report. The Commission on School Funding has done brilliant work in alignment with what Senator Neal has been doing for years about how we can modernize our tax revenue and our tax structure, and the digital download is first on their list. And I also think, even though I'm a longtime advocate of affordable housing that receives transferable tax credits, I think it is also very appropriate, that portion of the bill that would look at future awards of transferable tax credits and whether that's the best use of our revenue available. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Andrew Clark, that is C-L-A-R-K-E. I'm here today representing New Day Nevada, an organization that cares deeply about bolstering our state's revenue. So we kind of are here to make the revenue argument. Since the inception of the iTunes Store in 2003, digital commerce has boomed. Meanwhile, at the same time, our schools are underfunded, our healthcare system could be on the verge of collapse with federal cuts, and our infrastructure has crumbled. So with that said, AB 53 levels the playing field by applying the same tax structure to digital goods as physical goods, the same standard from Texas to my home state of New Jersey. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Riley Svensson, R-Y-L-E-Y-S-V-E-N-D-S-E-N, and I am the Policy Specialist with the Nevada Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. And while I have never held a cassette before, we are here today in support of AB 453 for a simple reason. It takes an important step towards fixing Nevada's deeply regressive tax structure by taxing digital products, lowering the commerce tax threshold, and ending unnecessary exemptions. This legislation ensures that large corporations and high-profit industries pay their fair share, helping to generate stable, equitable revenue for our state. Right now, Nevada ranks near the bottom nationally in funding for critical services like domestic and sexual violence programs, housing, and education. Victim survivors often can't leave dangerous situations due to lack of resources, and without consistent investment in community support systems, we cannot prevent violence or build safe, thriving communities. This bill creates a path towards a fair budget that reflects our values and meets the needs of all Nevadans. And for that, we urge you to support AB 453. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Randy Robison, Director of Government Affairs for the City of Las Vegas. There's no way to add to what either Assembly Member Anderson or Senator Neal said about the digital download portion of this bill. I'll just echo those comments. We're in support of that. With respect to the other portions of the bill or the conceptual amendment, we're neutral.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, my name is Wesley Harper. I am the Director of Government Affairs for the City of North Las Vegas. We agree with the comments of our sister city, Las Vegas. I have personally been in this conversation with Senator Neal for years. I think that her perspective is exactly correct, and this would be a great benefit to being able to stabilize the revenue of the state. For this reason, we are in support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll go to Las Vegas for testimony and support.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G, U-N-G-E-R, Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you to the committee
First of all, we wish to thank Senator Neal and Assemblymember Anderson for their years of dedication to working on Nevada's unstable revenue base by proposing solutions. AB 453 describes a modest excise tax on digital goods, similar to, with variations, digital goods taxes in 38 of 50 states. It's time for Nevada to join them. This kind of proposal is a small part of a fuller set of revenue reforms our state desperately needs to escape the bipolar whiplash conditions of boom and bust budgets to which it feels like we've all been condemned. Gaming, hospitality, commerce, and other taxes are just not enough to sustain the well-being and aspirations of our state and its citizens, especially not in these current chaotic economic times. AB 453 is a sound bill and one part of the whole set of solutions that we need. The Nevada Faculty Alliance strongly supports and thanks the committee for your time and consideration.
Good evening, Chair Baucus and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Christian Solomon, S-O-L-O-M-O-N, Western Regional Director of RISE, speaking in support of AB 453. As a nerd and gamer, I do not mind paying more for digital downloadable gaming content and comic books, especially if it means further developing our state's infrastructure and improving public education. Assembly Bill 453 is simply closing a sales tax loophole that gives the wealthy an unfair advantage over everyone else. If I go to Alternate Reality Comics on Eastern and buy a comic book, I'd be charged with the sales tax. But if I buy the same one online, it would be tax-free. It is not fair that in our state, the local comic book shop owner is collecting sales tax on all products they have, while big companies like Apple and Amazon, who make billions, don't. This needs to change. If you want to hold tech giants accountable, modernize our tax system, and prioritize our state's needs, please support AB 453. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We'll go to the phone lines. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 453?
To testify in support for Assembly Bill 453, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good evening. Alexander Marks with the Nevada State Education Association, speaking in support of Assembly Bill 453 as amended to tax the sale of digital products and to require review of transferable tax credits. We supported this idea the last few sessions, so this session we're just saying we hope you pass the digital plan. As the Commission on School Fundings identified its recommendations, they recommended the expanding of a base of sales tax as one of their main recommendations in that plan to reach optimal education funding in 10 years. Yesterday, we engaged at the K-12 Budget Subcommittee on Education Accountability to sound the alarm about Governor Lombardo's $2 budget for our kids. Instead of cutting education, we called on the governor and legislature to pass the plan offered by the commission. After years of work, the commission did identify their optimal funding and proposed a revenue path to reach that level by 2035, and that includes reforming property tax abatements and depreciation and expanding the base on sales tax. AB 453 is an important step in passing the plan. Sadly, we all know Nevada's record of corporate tax giveaways, Tesla, Raiders, Oakland Athletics, and now possibly Hollywood, which would be the largest tax giveaway in Nevada history. The effects of those tax credits on the budget are real. According to the Economic Forum's December projections, Nevada is estimated to lose $119 million in general fund revenue credits this year. That goes up to $143 million next year, with $36 million in credits for the A's Stadium applied without a single shovel hitting the ground. In fiscal 27, it raises to $157 million. So these are funds that would otherwise be going to important services like education. So NSEA asks for your support of Assembly Bill 453. Thank you. Pass the plan.
Chair, we have no more callers for support at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll go to testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 453. We'll start here in Carson City.
Good evening, Chair. For the record, Paul Moratkin with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is opposed to AB 453 as introduced. However, we do want to thank the bill sponsors for removing the sections in the proposed amendment regarding the sections 128 on the commerce tax component and SB 156. If the amendment is adopted as proposed, the chamber would move to neutral. We appreciate the work that's been done by Senator Neal and Assemblymember Anderson regarding the digital goods tax and those efforts to have those dialogue. So with that amendment, we would move to neutral. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If we can go to Las Vegas, I don't believe there's anyone in Las Vegas left to give testimony in opposition, so we'll go to the phone lines. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in opposition to Assembly Bill 453?
Chair, the public lines are open and working. We have no callers for opposition.
Great. We will go to neutral testimony. We'll start here in Carson City. Is there anyone wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 453?
Good evening, Chair Backus and the committee. For the record, Becky Dutro, DUTRO, with Nevada Taxpayers Association. The association is currently neutral on this bill, with additional clarity being needed on several key issues. We have engaged with the bill sponsor and are actively working to address these questions. First, we appreciate the sponsor's clarification that the amendment language for Section 128 will also be applied to Section 129 through 155, as this was one of our major concerns. Related to the digital goods, additional clarification is needed to confirm that the only digital equivalents of tangible goods, basically goods that were previously subject to sales and use tax, are being taxed. This like-for-like approach ensures consistency in the application of tax policy as goods evolve from physical to digital forms. We recommend ensuring that there is clear guidance on what type of digital goods are subject to taxation to align with this like-for-like concept. For instance, does this bill also include mobile apps, social media platforms, streaming services, subscriptions, and those sort of things? It's also important to ensure that the proposed tax structure aligns with the streamlined sales and use tax agreement and that any definitions or terms are not in violation of that agreement. While I'm not an expert on streamlined sales tax, it appears that Section 21 may not be in complete compliance with the streamlined sales and use tax agreement, Section 332 and 333, as these sections prohibit the terms specified digital products within the definition of tangible personal property. Finally, the bill should avoid creating an uneven burden on Nevada taxpayers. It is critical to ensure that the tax does not disproportionately impact in-state consumers or businesses while creating loopholes for out-of-state or international businesses that may not have a nexus. Thank you to the bill sponsors and the committee for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much. Doesn't look like we have anyone in Las Vegas, so AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give testimony in the neutral to Assembly Bill 453?
Chair, we have no callers for neutral.
Thank you so much. At this time, I would welcome the bill sponsors back up to the dais for any closing remarks. Do you guys kind of want to just say, you guys did a good job. Thank you. Have a good night. We will go ahead, and our last thing on our agenda today is public comment. With that, I will start here in Carson City. Is there anyone wishing to give public comment this evening here in Carson City? We still don't have anyone in Las Vegas. AVH, do we have anyone on the phone lines wishing to give public comment this evening?
Chair, we have no callers to give public comment at this time.
Great. With that, we can go ahead and conclude our evening this morning and, this evening. And it's still light out for the record. So everyone have a great night.